So welcome to today's webinar on copying assessments. Today I'm going to show you how to copy your assessments from previous academic year over to this new academic year, and I'll show you how to review your assessment framework, add assessments to next year's assessment policy, and I'll also talk about setting baselines and targets too. Okay, so the first thing you need to do when copying your assessments over is to review your assessment framework. So that means to have a look at your assessments that were created last academic year and to kind of go through and see if these are the ones that are applicable to this year. Are you wanting to copy all of them? So to review your assessments that you had created last year, you would go to Students, Assessments, Assessment Framework, and then the assessment catalogue. And then what you need to do is go to the Setup tab. So these are all the assessments that you had set up last year. Okay, so what you would do is just make your way through the list and just check that everything is what you want to carry forward to this year. Once you've actually looked through and you've decided on the assessments that you will be using for the new academic year, you can then start to copy them over. If you do want to create new assessments, you would select the Create New Assessment button, and then you'd go through the new summative assessment process. Now, if you want to find out details on how to set up new summative assessments, there are lots of guides within the Help Centre, or you can ask your Customer Success Manager or your Account Manager as well for further training on this module. Okay, so like I said, once you've reviewed your assessments, then the next step is to add your assessments to the academic year's assessment policy. So to do this, you would go to Students, Assessments, Assessment Policy, and first of all, we're going to look at your accessible courses. So these are your ad hoc assessments. So click into Accessible Courses. You would select the academic year, so you can go back, but we're going to leave it as 2019-20, and then you would bulk set accessible courses. So you can see all the bulk set accessible courses that you have listed, and we just basically select the courses, scroll down to the bottom, and save changes. And then you will see that these courses are actually now set up for the academic year. So what we'll do now is we'll have a look at setting up or adding your summative assessments to this academic year's policy. So to add your summative assessments, you go to Students, Assessments, Assessment Policy, and Manage Assessments. And then what we're going to do is we're going to add our assessments that we want to copy over. We're going to add them to the 2019-2020 policy. You can actually at this stage go back. So if it's a case of you wanting to copy your assessments to go back, you can just select the academic year from here, and then you would see that the add assessment to, and it would say the date range of the academic year that you've actually selected. But we're going to click the green Add Assessment to 2019-2020 policy. And using the drop-down box, you'll see it's automatically selected summative, but you do have the option to select curriculum, ad hoc, etc. So we're going to leave it as summative. Then using the drop-down box, we're going to select our assessment. So we'll select Key Stage 1, Maths, and select Next. You will then be asked what students that you want to enter into this assessment. So ours was a Key Stage 1, so I'm going to select our Key Stage 1 registration forms. Assessment period, using the drop-down box, you can select how you're going to measure or how often you are going to assess your students. So we'll say termly, and you do have the option to link it to courses as well if you wish. And then click the green Add Assessment button. And you'll see that our summative setup is in progress. Now, sometimes if you use the refresh button here, and you'll see now that it has actually been set up. Okay, so we're going to go back and follow the same process, but this time we're going to add our curriculum assessment. So I'll start from the beginning again. So you would go to Students, Assessments, Assessment Policy, and Manage Assessments, and it will bring you to this window here. Again, we're going to add an assessment to the 2019-2020 policy. But this time, using the drop-down box, we're going to curriculum. Again, using the drop-down box, we can then select our assessment and select next. We're going to select our students. So it was a Year 1 maths curriculum assessment, so we'll select our Year 1 students, and we would add assessment. It's the same as the summative that it would actually then be set up. It's just because they're linked with the summative assessments that you would have to add your summative assessment first and then add the curriculum afterwards. So if you do have linked assessments, that is what you would do. Okay, Penny, so the difference between summative and curriculum assessments, your curriculum assessments are based on, like statements. So can they be, so for instance, maths, can they count 1 to 100? Whereas your summative are more tests and tests that they will carry out, and you would assess them at certain times of the year, whereas curriculum is ongoing. So you can so the linked course means that you can have a curriculum assessment set up, which means that you can keep an eye on the statements and can they do what your statements say they can do, but then you can test them as well, and then you can have them linked so that the system will actually come up with a suggestive mark for your summative. There are lots of information within the Help Centre regarding the summative and curriculum assessment. Okay, so for your summative and Progress 8 assessments, ARBA automatically sets the baselines for the next academic year based on the final input of the assessment in the current year. So if you have entered a summer mark for the assessment in the previous academic year, this will automatically set the baseline for your current assessment. But to ensure this happens, there are a few things that you need to make sure you do. All students, you want to have a baseline for this year were enrolled into the assessment last year, so they have to be enrolled in the same assessment. The students must have a final mark added to last year's assessment, as I mentioned. You need to make sure that the assessment has been added to next year's academic policy. So that's what I've just shown you now about adding it to this year's policy, and also that you're using the same grade set in both as well. So I'm just going to show you what that looks like. So if I just jump onto this screen here, you should be able to see that for Key Stage 1 Science for last year, Form 1 PV have all had their marks entered. So they all achieved their Year 1 secure using the grade point scale. If I now jump on to to this tab here, you'll see that we've copied this assessment over for this year. So the pupils who were in Form 1 PV are now in Form 2 HE. We've created the assessment, or we've added the assessment to the policy for this year. It's the same students, we're using the same grade point scale, and they have had a final mark, which means that their baseline has automatically been set. Okay, if we hover over and select the more information, it does actually, if you scroll down, give you a breakdown of the baseline calculation and how we come to this mark. So if you want some more information, just hover over the mark and select more information. Okay, you can, if you've not set, or if you've not inputted the final marks for the last term, to set the baselines, you would then select baseline and targets on the left-hand side. You can go down individually and mark and enter a baseline just by clicking in. So you could select. Alternatively, you can select the tick boxes to the left. So if you have all the pupils with the same baseline, you could select everybody or just the ones with the same baseline. Then you would click on the blue pencil and you can bulk set your baselines. But the easiest way would be to just ensure that you have got marks entered for last year, and the system will then automatically do that for you. Okay, so with regards to targets and your year targets and final targets, now some schools do use a flat progress model for assessments, which means that students are expected to be working at the same level throughout the assessment, so you're not expecting to see a certain progress. So for example, if you may want a student to be working at the expected standard grade throughout their whole key stage. So to ensure this target populates through to the assessment each year, you need to ensure that the target has been set up with a final target and not just the year target. So, and I'll show you what I mean by that. So if we just jump on to this assessment from last year, so we're looking at our Key Stage 1 Science for Form 1 PV. If I select the filter, if I scroll down, you'll see that you do have the option to add a final target. So select final target and save the changes. And you'll see that our pupils have a final target inputted there. So at the end of Key Stage 1 Science, not at the end of Year 1, but at the end of Key Stage 1 Science, we do expect them to be at Year 2 Secure. Now to set this, you can select the tick box, click on the bulk pencil, and you can bulk edit the marks. And then the targets, sorry, let's go into the targets. You can click into the filter, add the final target within there. So you're going into baseline and targets. And as I say, you can go down then and manually put them in, or you can actually bulk edit and you can set your targets. Okay, so because we've got a final target for Year 2 Secure, if we look at this year's that we've copied over, you will see that we have a year target in there of Year 2 Secure. It's automatically pulled through because that is what the final target was. Now you can set your own targets. To do this, you would go to Students, Assessments, Assessment Policy, and School Target Rules. You would select your assessment, and then you would either click the green add or select Create Rule for Key Stage 1 Science. And you'll see that you have two options. You can either set up an attainment target rule or a progress target rule. So an attainment target rule means that you are going to enter a grade from what you want or what you expect the child to achieve by the end of the year. A progress rule means that you expect them to make so many steps. So if you are using a grade point scale, a 4 grade point scale, and you want them to go from Year 1 Secure, for instance, to Year 2 Secure, you would expect them to make 4 points of progress. So first of all, we'll have a look at setting up the attainment target rule. So click on the green link. You can give your rule a name. And then when a student is in, select the year group. What the rule is, you can select, I would select grade, and using the drop-down box, you would select what you hope or you expect them to achieve at the end of Year 1. And then you would just select the Create button. Okay. Again, we'll select the Create rule for Key Stage 1 Science, but this time we're going to set up a progress target rule. Okay, again, you can give the rule a name. And then we're going to say when a student is in. So again, we'll select Year 2 this time. So we're going to, so it's asking you what you want to expect. So it's compared, so at the end of Year 2, on their baseline, we're going to say we want them to make 4 steps of progress from their baseline, because their baseline was Key Stage 1 secure. By the end of year 2, we want them to be Key Stage 2 secure, and the grade point scale that we're using, there's 4 steps to get there. So we would select 4 grades compared to their baseline, and then you will just select create, and that would then set the rules. So when you go back into your mark sheet, you will see the targets, the year targets there. Okay, well, thank you very much everyone for attending today's webinar. It is quite a short one, but if anybody does need any further help, then do contact us. You can contact the support analyst team or your customer success manager, and we'll certainly help you through copying them over. Thanks everyone.